Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that most people in this room are descended from immigrants to the North American continent. And as immigrants to this continent, we have to understand the fact that our ancestors, either directly or directly through this immigration process, have committed a grave injustice in claiming this land for our own. Specifically, there were large numbers of indigenous people, known as Native Americans, in this place. And through various subterfuges and acts of violence, our ancestors forced them out of their homelands, forced them out of the lands they lived in peacefully and in harmony with the environment for hundreds upon hundreds of years. And we did this without a second thought. This was done out of pure greed and selfishness. And virtually no attempt was made to repay this once people came to their senses. So, this House believes that lands should be returned to Aboriginal peoples. Specifically, this would happen within the state of New York. These lands would be returned within 5 years to collective ownership to tribes who lived here before the European invasion. The land that is given, or the land that is returned, would be either their ancestral lands, or if that land is occupied, or currently occupied, then they would be able to choose an equivalent amount of land elsewhere in the state. Because, frankly, there's quite a lot of land in New York that's not being used. Specifically by occupied, I mean that the land has a population density of more than 50 people per square mile. This means that we won't have to give up Manhattan Island, or most parts of the southern parts of the state that are very high developed and would cause many people to leave their homes in a painful and unpleasant manner, not dissimilar from that which the indigenous people suffered. Upon receiving ownership of this land, a tribe would gain a sufficient grant to develop it as they saw fit, and they would be allowed to vote to determine their status under the New York State and United States government. For instance, they could return to the reservation status they were in before of relative autonomy, or they could choose to be simply another settlement within the state, as is, say, Westchester or Red Hook. It's necessary, it's imperative for us to do this. It's imperative for us to return to these people the land that we took from them. Because frankly, we can never repay this suffering. We can never repay we can never fix the horrors that we've inflicted upon those people. And any attempts that have been made in the past were feeble and two-faced, in that they tried to ease the people's consciousness by giving them land, when in fact the American government gave them the worst pieces of land out west, and then made them march to it under terrible conditions, and many, many people died. This is not repayment. We need to repay them as best we can. And although this will not cover, the plan that I propose will not, cannot possibly solve the entire problem, cannot possibly ease our consciences forever, it can go very far towards this end. And hopefully, and I hope that you will understand this and adopt this measure. Thank you very much.
I thank the Honorable Prime Minister for his speech, and now call upon the Leader of Opposition, who's writing furiously on a napkin right now, to rise and give a speech of an indefinite amount of time. Here. Bradley, forgot this. POIs or no POIs?
No POIs.
No POIs.
Okay, well, thank you very much to the Prime Minister. I thank him because he has given me much in his speech for me to speak passionately about. And that is always an opportunity that any member of this honourable Parliament will relish. So, let me begin first with my argument, which is in opposition, of course, to the resolution that we believe that land should be returned to Aboriginal peoples. And let me begin by stating that this is not a utilitarian resolution to the issue. And in fact, as I will argue later on in my speech, it is not a complete resolution to the issue, as, and I'm also grateful for this, the Prime Minister admitted himself in his speech. The issue at hand is an issue of political disenfranchisement. And in order to assess this issue, we have to assess what it is exactly that political disenfranchisement is, and we have to assess exactly the reasons for political disenfranchisement in this age. And land is not the root of this issue. And it is not by land which would act more so as a symbolic repayment or remuneration for suffering than an effective and practical remuneration that this resolution is attempting to solve the issue. Time was that land afforded the only means of economic sustenance. And in this time it was wrongful to rob land from these people. And in this time it was true that their political disenfranchisement stemmed from their lack of land. But times have changed. This resolution would provide, this resolution would not provide peoples in question with the fiscal and spiritual remuneration to which they are entitled. In this day and age, land is not at the core of that. To return land would only increase the holdings of a disenfranchised people, and it will not reduce their lack of political participation and their lack of means of effective lobbying in this country. So, what is needed here? Well, in essence, what is needed here is an effective means of remunerating these people. What is needed here is a means of allowing them canals of lobbying, of passing their interests onto government. What is needed is government intervention in their economic forms of living, which are not sustainable as they are. What is needed at this time is to recognize these people as participating, collaborating, contributing members of our society, and not to recognize them solely as a people alien to us, whom we have wronged, and so therefore must apologize. That is not the issue here. What we have are citizens of this proud nation who are not seeing the rights that they are entitled to fulfilled under our Constitution. And that is why we cannot adopt this resolution, because land will simply not do that. I'm glad that the Prime Minister mentioned that this isn't a holistic solution, because that is perfect for what I'm trying to explain. We need a holistic solution. We need a solution by which these people will cease to be disenfranchised. We need a solution by which they can become participating members. If their reserves are simply larger than they are, I challenge any member of this parliament to explain how that is going to increase their political participation. And I'd like to finish with some simple imagery here, provided once again by our Honourable Prime Minister, and that is of these groups of people roaming the state of New York in search for lands that suit them, that appeal to them, lands with a good view, lands with good water. This will result in something very similar to a part of our history that we'd rather not remember: the arbitrary seizure of land. And would we really like to support that? Would we really like to sponsor that? Will we not be having history repeat itself? Will we not be having the wrongs that were brought upon one people, brought upon another people in our age? I think this is perhaps the most unacceptable political scheme that we can see in this day and age, and for this reason, the resolution must fall. Thank you.